Hey guys, I'm Brandon, your DM for Cantrip, a D&D Podcast.
And I'm Cameron. I'm a playable character in the Cantrip Podcast.
And he is Tag McNuckles?
Yep.
Tag McNuckles is to my right here. If you follow us and listen to our podcast, this is actually our first video for our YouTube channel. If you listen to one of our more recent episodes, you did hear that we are making a YouTube channel. And this is it. It is called the Cantrip Cast. And it's not just going to be me and Cameron. It's also going to be Greg and Ian as well doing videos and stuff with us. We're going to be doing different videos such as discussions, overall reviews of the show, different scenarios that could have happened within playing the game. We're also gonna be doing how to play Dungeons and Dragons in general. We're gonna be doing reviews, and it's not just gonna be solely D&D based. We're also gonna do a bunch of different types of nerd type stuff, different role playing games and video games and all that jazz. You may have recognized me actually from my old YouTube channel, The Crafty Halfling. The Crafty Halfling was a channel I started maybe a little less than a year ago, and I really based it around Dungeons and Dragons terrain crafting. And while I love the channel and I love what I did with it, it just didn't come off passionate towards me. And doing this podcast, this has become something that I've actually become super passionate about, and it's actually gaining a lot of traction really, really fast, to the point where we're almost about to hit the 1,000 download and listen mark, and that is really big for us. We're only doing this for a couple months. So if you are one of our listeners and you're watching this video right now, thank you so much for being a loyal listener, subscriber, and everything else.
Yep. What we plan on trying to do is we're trying to get you guys to try to interact with us more, so it's not just a one-sided type of ordeal. We want to actually be in touch with our fans and try to get even just a slight bit of advice or help other people become new players become good playable characters, or a good DM, or just trying to figure out what they want to do in their aspect of whether if it's a certain video game they want to play, or just anything type nerdy stuff.
Yeah, that's one of the main reasons why I really started to do a YouTube channel for the podcast page and for the Cantrip Cast, as we like to call it, is I've gotten a lot of feedback from people giving me positive reviews and praise over the podcast, and they keep telling me that they're learning from it. They're learning how to play the game. They're starting to understand how to role play. They're starting to understand how to DM properly, interact with characters properly. And I keep getting comments and questions for tips and just how to do things in general. And instead of me just sending messages back, I figured, why don't I just make some videos describing the type of stuff we do on the channel and we do for the podcast. And while I'm at it, I might as well have a lot more fun with it and just make it a general just RPG and nerd channel in general. So that is what we're doing now. So today we are actually going to be doing a kind of intro to Dungeons and Dragons video. We're going to be giving some intro tips for any new players up there. This is a lot of different basic type stuff, but some people are new to the game, and if you're Googling or YouTubing how to play Dungeons and Dragons or how to start playing Dungeons and Dragons, this might be a video for you to watch, because we're going to be going over the very basics on how to get started. We're not going to go too in depth about some of the details, such as how to make a character and how to make a world. I'm going to be doing an entire separate series on world building in general. This is more of a general, hey, this is how you get started in Dungeons and Dragons.
How to basic.
Yeah, basically how basic. Okay, so starting off in Dungeons and Dragons, your first concern may be, I need friends to play with. That's easy. Just grab some friends, figure out who's going to play. One of the main things I did find that was the biggest challenge was finding people that had the schedule to do it. If you want to play monthly, find people that are able to play monthly. If you want to play more consistently, once a week, make sure you find people that are able to play once a week and don't miss out 3 or 4 sessions a month, because then that might kind of deter them from the story and kind of mess you up as a DM yourself. So when I was doing the podcast, I actually searched around a lot for people that had the available schedule to do it, and I had some people that were really interested in doing the podcast, but they told me, oh, well, I can only do 1 day a month, and that's on Monday mornings or something random like that. So after some good time of searching, I found a group of guys that have a general overall schedule, and we pretty much match schedules, and we can pretty much record whenever we want for the most part, and it's working out really well. We've got a lot of episodes ready to record and ready to go.
Well, I also wanted to talk about as well with finding a group. whether if you want to do it in person or if you want to do it online. There's a few other apps that you can do, like Roll20.net is a good example, along with Fantasy Grounds. But Fantasy Grounds is more so like a premium type of ordeal where the DM mainly buys a lot of the stuff. So it's just up to your guys' preference on whether if you want to get like a group of online friends to play or if you want to actually sit down and get a group together and play.
So yeah, that's that. Now, when you come together and think, I want to play Dungeons & Dragons, well, there's a few things you need to consider. It's, do you want to be a player or do you want to be a dungeon master? So, like me, I love being a dungeon master. I love playing the game as well, but for me, the world building and narrating a story is just super fun to me, and it's what really attracted me to the game. So naturally, for the podcast, I wanted to be the dungeon master. So that caused me to go out on the hunt for players that want to play the game. If you're a player, if you get, for example, if you're a player and want to play the game, make sure you search around, find a group of friends, and find somebody that is okay with being a dungeon master that wants to do it. Because being a dungeon master takes a lot of work. Because not only are you managing your game and your campaign that you're running, whether it's a module or a homebrew game, you're also managing your players as well. Another thing you want to consider is how many people do you want to play with? A lot of people, and I've played these games before, where we've played up to 8-person games, and at that point, it gets chaotic.
Wow.
It's not,
I've only played like with maybe 4, and even then.
Yeah, we did Curse of Strahd 2 years ago, and there was like 8 people involved. And not only was that hard for everybody to get together at the same time, it was just like to the point where you couldn't do anything because so many people had turns and there was so much going on. And I was like, it's fun. We were having fun. It was a good time. But at the same time, it was like, holy shit, this is a lot of people.
Like,
so
the fighting took like probably.
Oh, but the fighting took forever.
Like
it took us it took us over a year to get through Curse of Strahd.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, it was insane. So when I did the podcast and came up with it, I limited myself to 3 people. I figured 3 people was going to be perfect for us to get through the game. It's going to give us a lot of role playing. It's not going to be an overwhelming amount for me to handle as a DM. And also for a podcast, if you're listening, you don't want to listen to 7 people talk at once. You want to be able to focus on certain characters and their monologues and when they're talking at the same time. And I figured that 3 people was going to be best. And also with the less people, the more you get to bond with individual characters and learn about their backstories, rather than if there was 8 goddamn players around the table just making the entire thing one jumbled mess. But like I said, that's up to you. If you can handle a lot of people, go ahead and do it. It's fine. Like, I've played with probably the optimal amount or optimal number I'd like to say is between 3 and 6. 6 is probably top tier of my cap that I would go by, because anything after 6 just gets chaotic. Anything under 3 just it's kind of, I wouldn't say boring, but there's not a lot you can do.
It's a lot difficult.
It's a little difficult, and it's not as easy.
Yeah, because like I remember a friend of mine, he was trying to be a DM and he was trying to do like a little one shot with me before, and it got to the point to where like just being the only character, I just felt so left out, like so alone. And not only that, but I was getting ganged up by giant rats, and it was not fun.
Yeah. So that's players. That's finding people. It should be an easy task. If you got friends that are like you that want to play the game, it's easy. One other thing, to play the game, you don't necessarily 100% need these, but it does help. You can always find the information online, but having these helps the game a lot. The Player's Manual, the Monster Manual, and the Dungeon Master's Guide. These 3 books have all the core rules that you need to learn how to play the game. The Player's Handbook has all of the main core things to how to play the game as a player, how to make a character, has all the classes and all the traits and everything you need to know how to play the game as a player. The Dungeon Master Guide is for the Dungeon Master, obviously for obvious reasons. This guide is really actually helpful. It helps you learn the proper ways to build a world and to play the game and the rules and how to run combat and how to run encounters and random encounters, and it's got charts and creations and so much stuff you can use in this, so I highly suggest this. The Monster Manual is next. This has hundreds, and I mean hundreds of different monsters and creatures that you can use throughout your game to make it even better, and it's just a really good supply for the game. So I highly recommend and really encourage for you to get all 3 of these books. There's also many other books, like I have Mordenkainen and this Tomb of Foes. I also have Xanathar's Guide to Everything. I have another dungeon manual. It's not a Dungeon Master's Guide. It's made by D&D. It's like a Volo's Guide type thing. It's not Volo's Guide to Everything, but it's kind of like an offset book, and it has a lot of really cool things for it. You don't need those, but they do help a lot. But to play the game, get the 3 main books. Okay, so you've got your players, you've got the books, you're learning the rules, and everything's fine. One thing I will say about learning the rules, you don't have to read the entire book and the entire player's manual and the entire Dungeon Master Guide and the entire Monster Manual to know how to play this game. Dungeons & Dragons is a learning experience. A lot of people learn as they go. For example, Greg, who plays Nomo in the podcast, he's never played before. He's never played the game, but he picked off on it like that. Like I gave him the player's handbook one day, he skimmed through it, he was like, I'm ready to go, I think I can figure it out. I'm like, dude, you're fine, like just come in, wing it, and you'll learn from other people. So if you play with people that have played the game before, you will be able to pick it up. If you're playing with people that are completely new to the game, if you listen to not just my podcast, but any other podcast that we do for Dungeons & Dragons, it's a really good learning tool for how to play the game. And B, read the books, skim through the books, learn the rules of combat, learn the rules and the ideas of role-playing, learn how to level up your character, and just different things like that. So if you're new to the game, everybody's new, read up on the rules a little bit, skim through it, you'll figure it out as time goes. If you're playing with people that have played before and are well-tuned D&D players, you will learn off them, I promise, and it will be a good time no matter what.
And they're more willing to help you guys learn and give you guys advice on whether how you should play a character. Well, not really more so play it, but like kind of just what dice to use, when it's appropriate to roll for any type of certain like skills or just anything in general.
Dice is another one I forgot to mention. You can get a set of dice cheap at your local game shop for like $5. It's gonna have 7 dice on it. It's gonna have a D20, a percentile, a 10, a 12, a 6, a 4, and an 8. Yeah, that's all 7. $5. You don't need all these fancy dice I have online. They have metal dice that are coated in different types of metal shit that you don't need. They're like 20. No, just get yourself a regular set of plastic dice. $5. I've got a bunch of sets. I've gotten maybe like 10 sets of dice, and I've gotten them way cheaper than I'll get any kind of like metal set of fancy dice.
Yeah, I think I have like a good 11 of them.
Yeah,
just like
so,
in this big old bag.
after playing D&D for all, you become a dice whore and you want to collect as many dice as possible because it's just a weird thing. You're like, I want all these new dice because they bring me luck and juju. But
not only that, like a lot of them are really aesthetically pleasing.
They are, yeah. Oh, yeah. Rolling like one of your favorite die and seeing the natural 20 pop up just gives you that really good feeling. Then rolling one of your least favorite die and seeing a natural 1 pop up just makes you want to just cry. So like, yeah, it's fun having different kinds of dice for different scenarios.
We had our fair share.
Yeah, I know. Like I have a set of D6 dice that I use for myself for different things. For like if I am doing damage, on a mass scale where it requires like 3d6 of damage, I have specific dice I use for that just because it's just a thing as a DM I like to have. Anyways, let's go on to the type of game you're gonna play. There are 2 different kinds of ways to play this game. There are modules. This here is Hoard of the Dragon Queen and Rise of Tiamat. These 2 books actually go hand in hand. This one leads into this one. I ran these 2 books with an old play group of mine a few years ago, and it was really, really fun. And I actually taught a lot of my players how to play the game with these modules. If you're new to D&D, a module may be the best way to go because if your DM is new, the guide in the modules really help them kind of like walk through and step by step and kind of teach them how to play the game as well. They teach them how to role play, they teach them different creature stats and how to run combat in different scenarios. And when I first started playing, that's what I started with. I started with module campaigns, and then as I got comfortable running modules, I kind of got the idea of how to like create my own world and play the game in general. So modules are easy, everything's pretty much streamlined. That's the only negative thing I can really think about modules is the players can't do exactly everything they want because they have to kind of run by the book and you're streamlining them in one direction. Whereas in a homebrew game like I run, like a sandbox game, the world is open. My players can do whatever they want and I kind of write it on a week-to-week basis on what they do.
I don't think I've actually played through like a module. I think
there are a lot of good modules out there, I promise you that. Like Curse of Strahd is one of the best modules by far I've ever played. It's one of the only modules to have a more sandbox type feeling to it. I mean, it's still kind of streamlined in a sense because you have this one goal that you have to accomplish at the end of the book, but at the same time, it's a really good module. I highly recommend Curse of Strahd. Another one I heard that's really good is actually the Waterdeep Dragon Heist that just came out last year technically. And it's a really good campaign from what I've read online. I'm thinking about picking it up for my play group and the podcast to actually run maybe once a month to kind of do like a one-off episode here and there. But okay, so with writing your homebrew campaign, this requires a lot more work than a module. Okay, so with doing a homebrew game, I have to say compared to a module, there's a lot of work that goes with doing a homebrew campaign because you pretty much have to start from the ground up. I'm going to be doing a separate series, I should say, on world building in general, because this is a big category. Like, there's so much that can go into it, but at the same time, there's also so little that can go into it. It's really how you make it. I see a lot of mistakes being made by DMs where they start big, like they just start huge, and they just make this entire world with everything that's going on. But one thing I have learned to do over the years is I actually start small. I start with the starting town. I start with the outskirts of the town. Then I start with the continent, and then I kind of sprout to the continent. I kind of build up from the bottom up. You know, granted, with Alteran and the podcast, I do have pretty much the entire world mapped out, but that's only because I've been doing this for so long, and I knew for the longest time how I wanted this campaign to kind of look and feel. So I already have Alteran like pretty much built from the ground up. But as a new homebrew campaign and somebody new to making homebrews, start small. Start with a town. You know, you can come up with a quick one-shot session to start off an entire homebrew campaign in like 15-20 minutes. So, you know, you're in a town called Blackroot, and there is a woman going missing. She was taken by goblins to a nearby cave to be sacrificed to some sort of demonic god because they need blood from innocent humans to resurrect the god, and they're actually working for a cultist leader who is capturing goblins on using them under their will. So you can have the player start off in this small town. You can just tell them it's a small village, really basic, give some tiny descriptions, give a few NPCs, start them off in a tavern, and you know, they can overhear there's some news of some people going missing, and then they can go from there. Real quick, that's an easy way to start off a homebrew campaign until you start getting used to actually building the world in general.
Because I know typically people who like make a really big like whole storyline right from the get-go, they try to stream like real people into just going along with the story instead of I would say it's probably better to improvise a lot.
Yeah, I do a lot of, as a DM, I've learned to improvise a lot over the past couple of years because I don't like telling my players no, like, no, you can't do that because I wasn't prepared for it. And again, that's another topic I'll be doing a video on one day because that's another off-the-wall topic that requires so much more discussion and in-depth talking that like improvisation is huge as a D&D player, especially as a DM, but that's just something you learn as time goes on, as you learn how to play the game properly and the mechanics and the way things can go. But as much as I would like to talk about world building and homebrew campaigns, because that's like something I'm really passionate about, I'm going to save all that for a separate video series because there's so much that goes into that. But if you're watching this video and you want to get started right away before you see any of my tutorial videos on how to do that, start small, start in a small town, give a small easy quest, and build out from there. And your players will love it, I promise. Okay, real quick, one other thing when you're playing the game is, how do you want to play the game? There's a few different styles, and I kind of broke it down into two different ways. There's role-playing, which we do in the podcast, which we kind of have to because it's entertaining, you learn the characters, you actually listen to the story developing, and there's more meta-play. Meta-play is more relaxed, where you're not really talking in character, you're talking about the game while in the game, different things that can happen and what to do, what's best. Whereas in roleplay, you're physically role-playing your character. You're going to do what your character was built to do. Whether you as a person knows this is a wrong decision or this is a bad idea, your role-playing character is going to make the decision based on how you wrote them. Meta, on the other hand, is going to be more or less, well, I know that this is going to lead to something bad or this is going to lead to something good, so I'm going to do that because I know outside the game. Either way you play is fine. It doesn't really matter. It's really up to your play group. I would consult with your DM on the different kind of play styles, because if you have an entire table that is role-playing and you're the only meta player, people are getting kind of annoyed. So either way you play is fine. You just want to make sure everybody's on the same page about that. But either way, it is still a fun time.
And if you do want to try to do like a whole role-playing type system, you don't really necessarily need an actual like voice to voice your characters. You can still use your own voice.
Yeah, that's a good one.
It's a more so of, instead of leveling up, you're building your character and you're having your own personality with the character and you're growing attached with the character. That's your level up for our role-playing type of D&D.
Yeah. So you'll notice that a lot. Like in the podcast, I do a bunch of different voices as a DM because I like to give the different feels of what's going on in the world. Whereas Tack, he kind of deepens his voice maybe a little bit and does some different quirky things, which gives his character a little bit of personality. Pate actually just uses his regular voice. Like Ian talks normally, but for this character, that works. That's fine. Like people hear Ian's voice and they're like, that's Pate Asher. Whereas you have Greg on the other hand, who's Nomo, and he just flips a switch whenever he feels like it. But you know, that's something unique. You don't have to do that kind of stuff. You can just talk in your regular voice. If you want to roleplay your character, that's fine. You don't have to have a voice to roleplay.
Yeah, it's just more so having your exact background and what you like, what you would feel as if would fit that character
Appropriately.
Specifically or appropriately.
Yep. Okay, so last thing for this video before we sign off for the night is going to be character creation. Character creation is something, again, you need the player's handbook for. The player's handbook is a very vital piece to this because it's going to go through and it's going to walk you step by step on how to make your character. I'm not going to go through every single character and every single class in this video, but I am going to give a little gist of it. So I suggest first, you can choose either or. You can start with your class or you can start with your race.
I would actually start with what type of character you would want to play, whether if it's a long range or a melee base.
Yeah, or if you want to be the tank of the group or a healer. So start off with that. Break that down into categories. So you have your DPS, if you're a World of Warcraft player, you know what I'm talking about. You have your DPS, which is your damage dealers. You have your tanks, which take the brunt of the damage. You have your healers, which heal. And those are the main three categories. Figure out which one you want to play. From there, break it down into different categories. So damage dealers are things such as rogues, which I love rogues. Fighters, hunters, and paladins are a weird hybrid of all three actually, but you can play paladins in different ways. Sorcerers, wizards, there's different ways.
There's just so many.
Yeah, almost any class can be a damage dealer if you make it that way. There are also the healers, which are the paladins, clerics, and those kind of classes, and tanky classes, which take the brunt of the damage, such as the paladin is a good one because they have high AC and heavy armor. The fighter is actually a good one too. The fighter can usually be a damage dealer or like a tanky type class as well.
And a barbarian as well.
Barbarian, yeah, I missed that one. So I'm sure there's some other classes. Those are just some of the ones that are in the core player's handbook. There's also other classes and different expansion books for the game too, which I recommend you look into. For example, attack is actually an artificer, which is in
the Wizard of the Coast.
Well, I know it's Wizard of the Coast. It's in Unearthed Arcana, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's in Unearthed Arcana, which is an expansion to D&D. From there, you can choose your type of race. Different races have different benefits to different, things. So you can play any race you want with any class you want. That's the beauty of D&D. You can make your character whatever you want. Sure, I want to be a dragonborn fucking monk, or I want to be a gnome necromancer or warlock or whatever. You can do that. You can do whatever the hell you want, and it's great.
It's just all what you want.
It's what you want to do, but I will say there are different benefits to different races, to different classes. For example, elves make really good rangers or rogues, or halflings make really good rogues as well. Humans can make really good fighters because they get bonuses to different, base stats.
Yeah, humans are like the core base where they have an advantage to some things, but they also have a lot of disadvantage as well. It's really just a hit or miss depending on what kind of class you want to be with the human.
Yeah, so like I said, I can't go in depth too much about those classes. Again, that's going to be another category we do is class making and character creation and character building as well. With that being said, that's some basics on how to start playing Dungeons and Dragons. I wish we could go a little more in depth with some of the stuff we talked about today, but like I said, there's just so much of this game that we're going to start breaking down these videos and do them weekly on different types of, whether it's reviews, discussions, or anything you can think of. But other than that, that's all I can really say. Thanks guys for following, thanks for listening, thanks for watching. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. I'm Brandon Tharp, Dungeon Master.
And I'm Cameron Tack McNuckles as the Cantrip playable character.
And we are the Cantrip Cast. We'll see you guys next time. Make sure you listen to the podcast every Monday on our Libsyn website, iTunes, Spotify, and tons of other podcast sources.
Whatever you choose.
See you later.